when we went out into the community with these questions, and I'll just give you, some sense, we would, for instance, say, what first drew your family to Chicago? And the kids came up with that question because they said, it's important to assume that everyone came here by choice, that they want to be here. And when we get the story of their family and how they got here, that'll be a strong thing for them. And also we'll feel comfortable because we'll understand something about their background. And we also wanted to get people thinking about the city as a whole, because that had been where it all began. And we knew people had a hard time thinking that way. So we then asked a kind of a trick question, which is, when you think about the city as a whole, what images or people or places come to mind? Because that got people thinking about the city as a whole. And anyway, it went on and then asked people, and really the high point of the interview was to ask people what the high point of their experience had been as a citizen of the city. And why that was important is that this was a citizen-to-citizen conversation between the young person and the glue person. I didn't say whom we were interviewing, but we were interviewing people that members of the design team considered Chicago glue, meaning they were the people who held the city together against the odds. And they were all kinds of people. They might be the janitor in a public housing project, or they could be the president of the civic committee. But they were people of uncommon integrity because we were interested about thinking about the whole, and people who thought about the whole, because we wanted more of that. Anyway, when we designed these questions, and we also really began seeing the magic of the process, both the power of young people interviewing older people and each calling forth that hope and building a connection. Someone on the design team said, do you know, this reminds me of appreciative inquiry. Well, nobody else knew what that was, but it was an emerging body of research at Case Western University in Ohio that was discovering that when you asked people stories about what was working and did your envisioning from that trustworthy foundation, that it had much more power to sustain change. That work was being done in organizations, principally in businesses, by a team of David Cooperrider and Suresh Srivastava. And we had intuited our way there to an appreciative inquiry. We didn't know anything about the methodology. But once Imagine Chicago began testing this and seeing the power of it, I was very interested in how we helped understand and helped other people understand why it worked. And so I called up David Cooperrider, who was the father of this research, both because I wanted to evidence base in the research, see what I could learn, and also because I thought he might be interested in what we were doing. And as it turned out, he was coming to Chicago the very next week on his way to vacation in Wisconsin, stopped by my house. We were about halfway through the interview process, and he was just blown away by both the fact that we were doing this kind of interviewing in community, which he'd been doing in organizations, but also that we were using children as the agents of inquiry. That was such a powerful idea to him that he gave his talk the next year at the American Academy of Management on the child as agent of inquiry. And that really helped spread the ideas that Imagine Chicago had pioneered. We also at Imagine Chicago did some subsequent evaluations about what we had learned to kind of gather the graces. But we knew that in terms of a civic process, that we were looking at something that sort of felt like bottle magic.